I think so many people, like myself included, just prioritize work as so much about their identity. And like, I remember the first date with my boyfriend, and he was telling me about his work, but also all of these hobbies that he had and, this rich life that he was living. And then when it comes to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, all I have to talk about is my work. Like, I spend so much time working, and truly, I loved my job for so long that it didn't feel, a lot of my best friends were people I worked with. Like, it didn't feel negative to me that work consumed so much of my life. But when it started to feel negative, it just escalated quickly. You know what I mean? Because it was so much a part of my identity. It was like, well, gosh, if my 80% of my identity is in a really negative place right now, like, I'm not a good person. I'm not in a good space.
Welcome to the Women Inspired podcast, where together we explore ways to live our most joyful, aligned, vibrant lives. On this podcast, we draw inspiration from the lessons embedded in other women's stories, and we use them to catalyze our own growth and success. And we explore concepts and techniques from the fields of psychology and design thinking that can help us thrive and make the most of the one and only life we're ever going to have. My name is April Seifert. I'm a psychologist, an entrepreneur, and a self-proclaimed life experience junkie, and I'm your host and friend along this journey. This podcast is supported by Modern Well, a woman-centered co-opportunity workspace in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Friend, it is time to start living vibrantly, by design, and with intention. Here we go. Hey guys, welcome back to the Women Inspired podcast. My name is April Seifert, and I'm your host. And this week is awesome because you get to hear from one of my friends. It's going to be so fun. This week, you are going to get to meet a woman named Rachel Nearhood. And Rachel and I have known each other for a number of years, and I have had the pleasure of getting to see her throughout the entire span of her entrepreneurial journey. So Rachel and I actually met when she was in a traditional job, and at one point, she and I sat down for lunch, and she started talking about this idea that she had to start a company that was based around early childhood education, so years 0 through 3, and a set of products that she wanted to develop to support kids during, and families, frankly, kids and families and parents throughout that important and formative time period. She talked about this idea with so much passion in her eyes, and I just couldn't even handle it. I was so excited for her. And so it's really fun to have her on the show this week so she can talk about that journey. Now, the neat thing about what you're going to hear during this interview is you're going to hear somebody be very honest, very authentic, and very candid. This is not going to be a glossy Facebook or Instagram photo image-worthy explanation of what the pie in the sky view of entrepreneurship looks like. We're actually going to get into some things that are heavier and some things that came up for both Rachel and I. Frankly, I experienced a lot of the same things she did when I left my job. These things that you don't expect to come up, like the hit that you take to your identity when you no longer have a title that somebody else gave you, and how difficult it can be to motivate yourself or point yourself in the right direction when someone else is not telling you what your goal is. That's also tough. We're going to talk about that and so much more in this very candid overview of Rachel's experience throughout entrepreneurship. Now, I want to put one plug in. I want you to specifically listen for the conversation that we talk about around how Rachel was feeling before she left or as she was on her way out of her traditional job. She was so wonderful and so open and sharing of her story around the anxiety that she was experiencing and how it was infiltrating other aspects of her life and making her, putting her in a position where she wasn't experiencing life in the way that she wanted to. So she's going to talk about this anxiety and how it was ruining situations that she had with her family and close friends where she shouldn't feel anxious. She should be able to, enjoy those situations. I want you to pay close attention to that conversation because each and every one of us have these times when we experience symptoms that indicate that something might not be as aligned as we want it to. Anxiety can be one of those symptoms. I'm going to hit right on the head at the sense of dread that some of us feel before we go back to work on Sunday evenings, and a number of other times in our life when we experience symptoms that are very common, but because they're common, we assume that there's nothing we can do about them. The very reason why Ashley Smith and I started Peak Mind, the Center for Psychological Strength, is because of this exact conversation. This is one of the key reasons, because there are symptoms that people have that they could lessen through intentional work to become more psychologically strong. And that's exactly why we started the Peak Mind Center. So I'm excited about this conversation because it's so open and so authentic and so candid. But I'm also so excited for you all to understand that the feelings that you have that might be common, that other people feel, you don't need to sit with them. You can do what Rachel did and make a lifestyle change. Or you can join us in the Peak Mind Center. If you go to www.peakmindpsychology.com, you can find out more information. Join us there and work on your psychological strength. One way or the other, just because most people are feeling anxious does not mean you need to. It's not normal and it's not okay. So I want to give you that permission slip to go work on that. All right, this is enough blah blah. I'm really excited for you all to meet my friend. So let's meet Rachel Nearhood. Rachel, I'm so excited that you're here on the show today. This has been a long time coming and I'm so pumped we're finally talking to each other.
Same here, April. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And it's always a really fun episode when I get to have somebody that I know and someone who I am friends with on the show. And so this is an extra special day because we get to dive into a cool story that I know a lot about and I'm excited to share with people. So this is great.
Awesome.
So tell my listeners a little bit about you and help us get to know you.
Yeah, so live in Minneapolis. I'm originally from South Dakota, so made a small leap over to a different side of the Midwest, but have been here. I went to school here and have kind of made my home here. And just recently started a company called Ellie and Ott. So we've created a series of books that follows families through the first year of their baby's life, and help to couple a lot of early childhood development principles and behavioral science in with not only how we wrote and illustrate the books, but also how we included different baby activities. So things to do based on your baby's development, different like playtime activities, and then also giving parents some strategies to work on their own skill building journey as they navigate parenthood, which is a pretty interesting time.
Yes, it is. I'm super pumped about this for two reasons. One, I'm thrilled to get to tell people about your company and about the awesome products that you're putting out in the world. So we're definitely going to dive in there. But I'm also really excited because your personal story of becoming an entrepreneur is a really neat one. And you and I met actually prior to any of this happening. You were in a very normal job. And as we, chatted, I think this idea had been percolating and now it's fun to see it coming to fruition. So I'm wondering if you can take us back and give us a little bit of a deep dive into what were you doing before and how did this idea come to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So before Ellie and Ott, I was at a healthcare, consulting healthcare product design firm for just over 6 years and joined the research and strategy team. So before going to this company, I didn't even understand what design thinking was or product development or product design really. And kind of serendipitously got hooked into this team that was pretty small and new, that was really focused on the upfront research that goes into developing a product. And then certainly over the time that I was there, moving into even services and kind of wraparound services that go with products. And it gave me such an interesting peek into, one, the world of healthcare, which is insane and crazy interesting and also crazy scary in many ways. But also gave me a really good lens into how important gathering that customer feedback is before you've made the leap into putting a ton of money behind, a product direction or a service direction. and how to kind of go about getting those answers in a way that doesn't necessarily, lead the consumer to tell you what you want to hear, but really getting to the source of what their problem is and then finding solutions that can meet the needs that they are expressing and that, hopefully they will pay for within that solution.
Amazing. And so you were in that role, and maybe the role itself might seem different to some people, right? Like some people are in research, other people are in maybe financial services or different kinds of, office jobs. But the structure of your day was pretty typical, right? 9 to 5 job, went into an office, worked with other people, that type of thing.
There are components of it that were pretty structured in that, we had an office. There was a lot of travel also involved, mostly because a lot of the research that we did was really going into hospitals, into patient homes, and seeing firsthand either one, how they're using a current product, a competitive product, or how they're, completing the same sort of a task using whatever materials they have currently. And then what could we maybe provide that would be better than, with our current solutions. So there was a lot of travel, which made it pretty interesting from like a day-to-day perspective of kind of where you were. And then the cool thing about it, truly, and one of the things that I loved for a long time about that job was that it was very project-based. And so while the day-to-day, we were doing the same sort of tasks over and over again, but it was always for a different topic, a different subject matter. So it felt like even though it was somewhat repetitive, it was always constant learning, which, made kind of some of that day-to-day tediousness a little bit more exciting just because, you were learning about a new disease state or a new patient profile or, watching a new surgery, those sorts of things.
So that sounds like it has exactly nothing to do with with books and activities and toys for kids. Where did the idea for Ellie and Ott come from? Like, where did you initially come up with it when it was like, wouldn't that be interesting?
So I've always loved education. I would make a horrible teacher and never wanted to work in a school, but I've always been so fascinated by the idea of learning and how impactful learning is on everything that you do in life. And happened to meet a woman a number of years ago who was talking about early childhood education and so like that 0 to 3 space, like really, really early on, and just got enthralled with the idea of how important those first 3 years are to later learning, to later development, but also how kind of uncharted that space is, because in many respects, like your child might be in daycare, they might be in preschool around that time, or they might be, home with you. But, the people who are chiefly responsible for teaching kids at that time are kind of parents, and parents don't go to school to learn how to be a parent. Like there's not always a ton of resources that are given to parents to figure out some of that information. And so I just started diving a lot into the space and seeing kind of what was available and wanted to do something this was so also to take us back in time around like 4 years ago. This was when like Birchbox was becoming a really big thing. And that idea of like the monthly subscription and constantly getting stuff in the mail. And like when Netflix, back when they used to mail you DVDs, like it was like back
Those are the days.
Right? And so I was like, well, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if you could get timely information that was geared around the age of your child and, potentially came with resources or, toys, things like that. And the initial thought process that I had actually was that you would like report back data on how your child does in these activities. And we would build a bit of a profile for your kid that really talks about their learning style. And so saying, here's how they learn best. Here are the things that they're kind of interested in. And then imagining, a world where they're placed into, kindergarten teacher A's class versus B because of the way that they learn. And now they're being taught in a way that resonates with them, not so much, just the one size fits all model that kind of currently exists in education. And so from there, obviously throughout those 4 years fell in and out of love with my job, like around that time. And kind of got to a point where I was just having a lot of just a lot of anxiety attacks around travel and around just the work and feeling very stressed. And also just got to a point where I wasn't loving what I was doing anymore and wasn't feeling passionate about it. And I was leading a team. And if some member of my team came to me saying that they were not feeling passionate and needed help, I felt like I was at a loss to give them any sort of assistance, because I was like, you know what, I'm in the same boat. And it just was like, I'm not doing any service to my company, to my team. I need to make a change. And even just like for my own mental health, like I needed to do something different and really reprioritize my life. And so then this is all kind of roundabout way of saying like, made the leap to do Ellie and Ott full time. Talked to a number of parents and educators kind of in those 4 years, and moved away from the idea of doing activities and reporting back data for a couple of different reasons. So the idea then was that Ellie and Ott would be the subscription box that would just give you information on how your kid is doing. Sorry, not how your kid is doing, but just generally how your baby is developing and what are things that you can do to take action on this information. And very kind of, I don't know, like it's so stupid, I think, to say, but this idea of, when you put it out into the universe, I feel like the universe delivers. And in, like the beginning of 2018, it would have been, I knew that I needed to make the change and started to talk to more people about it, and had a child psychologist that I was friends with, told her about the idea, and she was like, this sounds awesome. I'd love to help you. And I'm like, okay, check. I found, my science-backed person that I really needed. And then also met this illustrator whose style I loved, and she was in the midst of transitioning jobs and geographies. And so it ended up that we could work together. And it just kind of felt like the universe was saying, all right, there's this team that has been assembled, and you guys can go and create something amazing. And so it was just kind of like, okay, well, why not? Like I can't, turn down this sort of an opportunity. And so let's see. So to get into like the subscription, so initially then we were going to be the subscription where you got these activities mailed to you. And with the illustrator, it really became apparent that like some sort of a book would be really awesome to include, just because storytelling and book reading and story time and everything is so much a part of parenting and kind of the interaction that you have with your baby and with your kids. So we wanted to have that component in there. And then the more that we got into kind of the logistics around a subscription box, the finances around it, it became that it probably wasn't going to be viable to start off with. So then we just moved to more of a straight retail model where we sell, the books and the activities together, or the activity ideas, and people can buy them, either individually or as a set of 3 or a set of 12.
That's an amazing, it's just an amazing, like front to back, like story of how your company grew to be. But what's under the covers of that, and where I want to dive into next, is just some key pieces that are maybe 2 levels deeper than that I think my audience would be really curious about. Number 1, in a stable job, comfortable, making good money, whatever, all like it's predictable, all of that. Were you afraid to leave your job and go do something quote unquote risky or new or different like this?
Yes and no, I think would be the honest answer to that. So I knew at some point in my life, I always wanted to start my own company. I knew that was something that, I wanted to be part of my story. And so my dad is a financial planner. I've always been very careful with money. And so I did have a stable job. I was making a good salary, and I was, saving has been built into me from the time I was a child. So I have constantly been saving money. And so from a financial perspective, I think that helped to kind of lessen some of the worry of how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to, eat and all of those things. And I think also truly it was like the level of anxiety attacks I was having, and just the mental health break that I really needed, that I think, like, I just vividly remember one moment where I just woke up and I was like, I am like, my parents were here, my brother was here, and I'm like, I'm with the people that I feel the happiest and the most secure around. And because of something that's happening next week with work, I am having like a low grade panic attack for 4 days straight. Like, this is not healthy. and this has to change. It almost didn't even feel like a choice that I could make. It felt like a choice that had to happen, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. Wow. And something I want to go even one level deeper with that piece, because there are common feelings that people have. So folks listening to this, I want to put you in a particular situation that I know is very common. And that is the situation that happens around Sunday evenings for a lot of people who, yeah. People who are in their car are probably like, oh, don't go there. So I'm going there. Sunday evenings, it's common that people who are in, typical jobs, 9-to-5 jobs where you're working Monday through Friday, that time frame is just tough for people, right? You just feel low grade, but anxious and a sense of dread. And it just isn't, it's not a calm, comforting time for a lot of people. And it repeatedly happens every single week. And what I think is interesting is there are some of these common and not insanely severe, but they're fairly pervasive things that happen to people that just because they happen to lots of people, we assume that they're normal and that there's nothing we can do about them and that, oh, I'm just going to suck it up and I'm going to deal with it. When in reality, that feeling that you're having, that's anxiety. And the feeling that you're having could be lessened or alleviated in a number of different ways, but one of which it could be a signal that you need to make a change in your life. So I wanted to just call that out, because you recognize that in your own situation that, hey, things don't have to be this way. Just because lots of people feel anxious about their job doesn't make it okay. It doesn't mean that this is a healthy thing for us. And so using that as a catalyst for change, I think is so incredible because so many people don't. They don't even recognize that it's an issue.
Yeah, well, and I think so many people, like myself included, just prioritize work as so much about their identity. And I remember the first date with my boyfriend, and he was telling me about his work, but also all of these hobbies that he had and, this rich life that he was living. And then when it comes to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, all I have to talk about is my work. I spend so much time working. And truly, I loved my job for so long that it didn't feel, a lot of my best friends were people I worked with. It didn't feel negative to me that work consumed so much of my life. But when it started to feel negative, it just escalated quickly. You know what I mean? Because it was so much a part of my identity. It was like, well, gosh, if my 80% of my identity is in a really negative place right now, I'm not a good person. I'm not in a good space. And having to separate, some of that identity and association with, being successful and being confident and being, someone who can tell people what I do for a living and feel, good about that and stuff. Letting go of some of that, I think, was pretty difficult and something I had to work through, but also a very necessary key piece of being able to step away and say, prioritizing my own mental health is so much more important than feeling, validated by this paycheck that I get.
Hi, friends. I have a very important announcement. If you caught episode 124, you know all about what I'm about to tell you. But if you haven't, I want to make sure that you are in the know. As of August 1st, the Women Inspired podcast will become the Building Psychological Strength podcast. This pivot will focus the content of the show around the concepts of psychological strength and intentional life design, the two topics I get asked about more than anything else. I'm simultaneously beyond excited, but also a little bit sad. I'm sad because I'm transitioning out of a brand that has become such a big part of my life, but I'm beyond excited to transition fully in a direction that'll serve you at an even higher level. And that's the whole reason why I'm here in the first place. So, a few things will change. You'll notice new cover art, a new title, and a slightly different feel to the podcast going forward. The content of the podcast will focus more specifically on aspects of psychological strength and ways to apply life design to your own lives. Again, the two topics that I hear from you about most often. But other things won't change. I'll still be here. Each and every week, I'll still have the same dedication to bringing you guests, information, techniques, and tools to help you thrive in your life. And I hope you'll continue to join me each week. You don't have to do anything on your end. The change will automatically happen on August 1st, but I wanted to let you know ahead of time because I truly consider each and every one of you a dear friend. If you'd like more information about the transition, please catch episode 124. And thank you so much for being with me on this journey. That was so huge. That's so huge. And there's a couple of pieces in there. One is that for folks listening who are thinking about leaving, a more typical job and going into an entrepreneurial role, there are things that come up in that first couple of years, especially as you leave a more common job or a more common path, that they happened to me too, and I didn't expect them. And one was what you're talking about, the degree to which our identity is wrapped up in our jobs. I'm the insert your title of insert your department at insert your company. That sentence is so comforting. And the second piece that I want to call out is very related to this, but it's a distinct thing. Someone, I don't know whose quote it is. I have no idea. It wasn't me, but it was really relevant. So Google if you want to know whose it was. But they said, it's not always the fear of failure that we have. It's the fear that other people will see us fail. And so much about that identity, it's not, there's a piece of it that's ours alone. There's a piece of it that we have a tough time with because it's an identity shift, just like, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a bit, but when you become a parent, there's a lot of positive things around that, but the change in your identity into being one of a parent, it's not easy to make that shift. It never is to change your identity in a significant way. So some of that is ours and it's individual, but there's a whole other layer that is other people's expectations, other people's judgments, other people's opinions, what they're voicing, what you think they're thinking, your assumptions about them. So much of that is so external, and we give that external stuff, or our perception of what that external stuff is, we give it so much weight. Right? So
100%.
much weight.
I mean, like you brought up becoming a parent as an example of that, like getting married as an example, getting, having this new job, starting a business, any of that. It's like you are so nervous to share, like any sort of a negative component to it because you have to present this face of like, oh, my marriage is wonderful. Like being a parent is wonderful. I love my kid more than anything and I'm never unhappy. Like all of those things, because if you do share that negative side of it of, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills because my company isn't bringing in as much money as I thought it would. Like things like that, people just kind of look at it as like, oh, well, why did you even bother trying? Or, oh, your marriage isn't doing great. That's too bad. Like mine is really great. Or I don't know. There's that weird judgment that kind of comes with it. And obviously with social media, it like only becomes amplified because everyone shows all this positive side of things. And even when people say things on social media like, oh yeah, like I know that I put all these pretty pictures up here, but I can promise you that my relationship isn't always perfect. And it's like, yeah, but it's accompanied by a beautiful photo of you and your husband. And how can I trust that things aren't actually great all the time because you only talk about things being great all the time? And yeah, that's kind of a tangent, I think, from where you were going. But
no, but it's related. It really is. All of that compounds into bottom line, as you move into this role, you pick up some amazing positives, right? Your day-to-day life changes. It's different. You have a lot more control, but you lose that easy to access and easy to explain to people identity. You also lose, and this is another question that I have for you, around how you dealt with, and maybe you loved it, I don't know, I had a little bit of a hard time in the beginning too, how you dealt with the degree of freedom that you end up having, because up until this point, someone else has always been telling you what your goals are. And this starts when you're a baby, right? Your parents tell you what your next goal is. School tells you what your next goal is. You have graduations in front of you. And then there are, work goals that people are giving you. Everyone else is telling you what direction to point and what you are trying to strive for. And then you start your company and it's literally, you look at your calendar and it's a blank slate and you can put whatever you want on that blank piece of paper. But wow, is that a different experience? What was it like for you?
Oh my gosh, that truly, if anything, was my biggest fear in going to start a business. And one of the reasons why I hesitated for so long in doing it, because I work really well with other people. I work great on a team because I have other people holding me accountable and I can, bounce ideas off of them. I'm a social worker in that sense, I think. And making the leap to this where I have, the psychologist and the illustrator that I work with, but we're in different locations. We work pretty independently. I'm the only one who's full-time on the business and am having to do a lot of those tasks, on a solo basis. And that accountability piece of like, I am the one telling myself, these are the tasks to do today. And if I don't do them, nobody cares and nobody knows that I didn't do them. And that lack of accountability was so hard in the beginning. And frankly, it's still hard for me. Like that's something that I have to work through a lot of. That freedom is great because I can, I go to the gym at 8 a.m. in the morning and I don't start work until 10. And being able to set the hours like that for myself has been wonderful to give myself kind of that reprioritization in my life. But it's also been really hard because if I don't start work until 10:30, again, nobody's watching my clock and no one's saying that you need to get going. And so having to put all of that on myself is something that I think I struggle with every single day. And even, helping to prioritize my own tasks of should I spend my afternoon doing this versus that, and helping with that decision making has been a huge learning process. So yeah, that freedom is like such a double-edged sword of being great because I can pick up and, go have lunch with a friend for an hour and a half and I don't have to worry about getting back for anything because I set my own calendar. But also when you have 4 hours that you don't have anything scheduled and you have to figure out what to do in that time, can be, it's stupid because there are so many things that I have to do. I have a running task list that is only growing longer. So I have things to do, but policing yourself to do it is, for me anyway, has been like one of the biggest challenges for sure.
I hear you. How about around the notion of being busy? That's something else that I'm just going to air my dirty laundry. I feel good about myself and I feel important when I'm running around like a crazy person with way too much to do. That's totally how I'm wired. If there's 5 minutes, I'm going to shove 15 minutes of stuff in that 5 minutes. It's my propensity.
Yeah. And especially like in a startup situation, any podcast, article, whatever you read, it's always people working, 100 hours a week. And that's the only thing that you think about. And you don't sleep because you are working from, 2 a.m. until midnight, like sort of a thing. And it's that idea of having to fill a lot of hours was hard at first because especially when you're first starting, like there's a lot of stuff to do, but some of it is still needing to be figured out and kind of ironed out. But I also think that I am very much a believer in the work smarter, not harder. And so there's a lot of time that I spend thinking about things for my business, but the active hours that I spend working on it might be smaller because I'm thinking, and I mean, I was the same way with putting together presentations, with doing, reports for school, all that kind of stuff. Like I would be thinking about it somewhat constantly, but when I went down to actually, put words on a page, it was different. Because I wasn't, I might not be spending 10 hours in front of my computer trying to do it, but I spent 10 hours thinking about it so I could spend 2 hours in front of my computer doing it.
I love that. And I think that too, you mentioned social media before with other people's expectations around, how great our lives are and how well things are going. That busyness piece is also something where societally and just as a culture, we reward people, and we also think that people are important if they are really busy and running around like a crazy person. And so it's, for me, because my tendency leans that way, I have to be so intentional about thinking about, okay, are you doing this? Are you putting yourself in this position because this stuff actually has to be done? Like, what is your deadline? When do you actually need it done? Or are you doing this because you're cueing off of social cues and other people who are also falling into that trap? Like, we all are. So are you cueing off of other people who are falling into that trap? So you're just sort of falling right in line and doing it too. There's so much intentionality that has to come into play when you're the one directing the show. And I just wanted to make, another point about that, because it's something that surprised me. I just thought, oh, this will be awesome. I'll have all this free time and flexibility. But, a lot comes up and a lot comes from that.
Yeah, it's like you get a lot of flexibility. You don't necessarily get a lot of free time. But even I feel like, it's such a badge of honor nowadays for people to be like, oh, yeah, I work like 70 hours a week.
Totally.
And it's like something people brag about. And I'm like, I did that for so long. And I don't want to have to say those things anymore. I don't want to brag about how many hours I work. I want to brag about, not so much how little I work and how much it pays off, but just being, I think, so intentionally focused from the beginning of the company of like, how do we create a strategy around something and execute against that versus executing all of these different things that might not actually build up to a larger strategy, but keep us busy or, are things that I can just be doing in the meantime. How can I be more intentional about where my time is focused?
Yeah. One more thing that I want to ask you about, and then I promise I'm going to wrap this all up in a bow. There's a reason why I'm asking this series of questions. Your company involves, you mentioned books and you mentioned information. There's a lot of moving pieces to this, right? Like, you had to manufacture books. You had to validate the information that you're sending to people. You had to find a way to get your product into a retail location. Like, there's a lot of steps, like tactical steps that you had to take to make this company come to fruition. And a lot of people that I hear from will say, I would love to take my salsa recipe and I would love to sell it in the supermarket, but I don't know how to produce it at a bigger scale. And I don't know how to make it, pass like the FDA or whatever else it has to. And I don't know how to get it in the store, so I can't do it. And these tactical things are the reason why people don't move forward. How much of all of that did you know how to do from the beginning, and how much of it did you have to figure out?
Like 100% had to figure out. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I can confidently say, I studied entrepreneurship in college, and granted it's been, 10 years since I've been out of college, but I kind of felt, okay, there's going to be some things that I'm already going to have a handle on. And I didn't at all feel that way. I mean, even just in registering my business as an LLC, it was like, how do I even do this? Like, do I need a lawyer? Can I do it on my own? And ended up very much overpaying a lawyer to do some things that I think ended up being pretty simple. But there was all of this just kind of shooting in the dark, a lot of Googling, and I mean, there's a lot of resources out there when you start to look for them. And everyone that I would talk to and I would say, yeah, I'm kind of struggling with this, it felt like there were a lot of people who would say, oh, I know someone who had to do something like that. I'd put you in touch with them. Or, this is an article that might be interesting, or a website that you might want to check out that has some good info. Like, there was a lot of assistance I think I received from people. But even like you talked about manufacturing the books, like I initially was looking at doing more of a paperback sort of a book, because I was like, well, doing a board book, I don't even know how to do that. Like, most printers don't even do something like that. And then, the more that I talked to consumers, it was like, well, no, if you're doing something for babies, it has to be a board book. So then it was like, okay, I got to roll up my sleeves and really figure this out. And just started Googling a lot of it. There's one board book manufacturer in the United States that I was able to get in touch with, and, ended up getting a lot of quotes from China and from this other manufacturer. And they've been pretty awesome to work with too, just because this is the first time I've done any of this, right? Like they can kind of help us with templates and saying, all right, let's work back and forth and making sure that your book is how you want it to look, and, those sorts of things. And so that has been awesome to receive that sort of assistance. And I think also kind of putting it out there of, not trying to fabricate like, oh, I'm, an old hand at all of this stuff, but really kind of being vulnerable with people and saying, this is my first time doing it. I need a little bit more hand holding, and I need you to, walk me through the process a little bit slower. But I think that, you can, I guess, tried to get people kind of on board with the mission of what we were doing and what we were building, so that they maybe felt okay taking a little bit longer and, enduring a lot of really stupid questions from me for a long time. But yeah, it's a lot of just figuring it out. I mean, even things like, I don't do my own personal social media that much. I don't engage that much on it. But then when it comes to your business, like you have to do all those things. And so really figuring out like what kind of an Instagram strategy do we put together? Like, how do I build a freaking website? Like all of these things that I was just like, I'd never learned any of this in school. Like, why didn't they teach me these things? This would have been so much more helpful than, some of the other things I maybe learned and probably forgot. But yeah, all that sort of stuff is, it just took a lot of time.
And here's the bow. This is why I asked this series of questions. And let's recap. So you left your, comfortable 9-to-5 job, and you experienced this difficult identity shift that a lot of people experience. And I mean, quite frankly, and we kind of mentioned this before we started recording, but you felt like an imposter, right? Like I'm a person who's pretending to have a business.
Yeah, right. I promise
not,
it's real.
Yeah, right. I promise. I'm not just, sponging off of someone, right? So you felt like an imposter, and you didn't feel legitimate in this new role just yet. You also had a struggle with how to point yourself in the right direction that was going to be most effective and use your time effectively, but also, give yourself that white space to be creative and whatever. And you had an idea for a product that you didn't know how to make and didn't know how to get in the hands of a consumer. And yet, so with all of that, like, right, all of that, and yet you still have a company that is selling the product you didn't know how to make. And you're leading the company that you felt like an imposter for starting. So I wanted to wrap that up because it's so easy when we are freaked out about a change that we've made. Like we were scared of something new that we're trying, that sometimes we, even subconsciously, we are looking for a reason, a point-attable, logical sounding reason for us to quit so that we can go back and be more comfortable. And I just want to wave a big BS flag that none of these are those reasons, because people, Rachel's one of them, I'm one of them, and stinking every person who has started a business is them. They're not reasons to quit. You just keep going, and you just feel gross for a while until you feel less gross and eventually don't feel as gross at all. So yeah, in spite of all that, you have a company. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about it. Like, tell us about the products and tell us where we can find them. And just give us all the details.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to ellieandott.com, like Ellie the elephant and Ott the otter. So those are our two main characters. We structured everything around this, so the three components of it, right? The book, the playtime activities, and the parent skills. But everything really has this core backbone of science behind it. So what is, proven child development, timelines, and, kind of basics within that, because in no way are we reinventing child development, right? Like that's science. We're just taking that science and we're making it really digestible and giving parents information that is segmented by month. So we still kept, even though we didn't end up doing the subscription, we still kept that idea of a month by month kind of game plan that parents could use, so that they knew when the information was most timely, and gives them, information of here's how your baby's developing. But even past that, because it feels like all of that information is out there, but having having the knowledge of how to take action on that information and incorporate that development into playtime is so important. And so many parents just don't have time to figure that thing out, like, especially when you've just had an infant, like you don't have any time to be researching what are activities I can be doing. And then when, if you go back to work, you also don't have a lot of time, but you have like 2 hours every day that you can spend with your baby, and you need to make that impactful. And so giving parents really salient ideas of here are some things that you can do was really a key component of it. And then we also wanted to give parents things for themselves. So that's where those, the relaxation techniques and communication strategies and those sorts of things come in. We theme them each month. And so, like, for instance, the first month is survival mode. So it's really just, what are 3 strategies to help you survive this first month? We have like mingle mode is our month 5. And so it's all about kind of how to feel about incorporating your baby's life with other people's lives, and kind of, refinding your own social net. And then the stories themselves have some sort of an overlap between either the parenting theme or the baby activities. And even the books we took from a really intentional approach around how babies are developing. And so, like, our first book is all black and white because kids don't see color right off the bat, or they can't process it very well. And so it's high contrast, it's simple imagery, it's using text to even supplement some of the imagery. It has a lot more text than what you would see in a typical children's book, because right off the bat, kids can hear and they need to hear their parents' voice, but they can't see very well. And so if you're spending all this time trying to engage them with this beautiful picture book, like, it's not going to work. So giving parents even a really empathetic view into, this is how my child's like eyesight is developing, and the things that I need to prioritize when I'm interacting with them is kind of what we've tried to do through the books. And the stories themselves are very like parent related. So, like, our first book is about Ellie's birth story. It's not a typical children's book story. It's told in a way that you can read it to your child, and it's not inappropriate in any way, but it's also a story that is kind of like really there for the parent to say, this was a hard moment and you did it. And that's amazing. And, like, our second book is about Ott's parents struggling through the first month of, their baby's life, or the second month, and talking about, will we ever feel productive again? Will we ever have a clean house again? Like, things like that, that are stories that you will hear in every family from those, stages of life, and wanting to echo those back in a way that doesn't make light of them, but helps to, I don't know, just kind of like share them in a way that feels more empathetic and relatable to parents, because especially at that age, like, your kids can't understand anything that you're saying, but you can understand it and you're the one reading it. And so we wanted to give parents something that was also for them.
I love that. There's so much thought that went into, and there's thought and nuance that goes into something that's so simple as a board book. It's just wonderful. Can you tell us one more time, give us your website one more time, because I was just on it and it's so stinking adorable. You have to tell people where to find it one more time.
Yeah, it's Ellie and Ott. So ELLIEANDOTT.com. And so we have all of the books and products up there. We're also, if you're in the Minneapolis area, we're in Pacifier and working to get into some other baby and children's books or children's boutiques in the cities. And then hopefully, in the next few months, we'll be signed with a distributor and we'll have more kind of nationwide presence. But until then, our website is the easiest way. And then potentially Amazon. Amazon's been a bit of a beast. So our website is for sure the easiest way to make sure that you get the most up-to-date content and the full line there.
Amazing. As we're wrapping up today, I kind of want to bring this back to where we started. For people who are listening to this who are interested in starting something new, maybe you're not even going to quit your whole job. Maybe it's something on the side. Rachel, I would love for you to share, like, what is one tip that you could give them to get them to the point of actually taking action? Like, what's one thing that you can say to somebody who might be on that teetering point or sort of flirting with the idea of doing something that's this far out of their comfort zone?
One thing I did that I think ended up being really helpful for me. So in 2017, I told myself, because, I had been thinking about some sort of an idea that related to this for a while. And I told myself in 2018, you need to make a decision on it. You don't have to do it, but you just have to make a decision, because you can't keep it in the back of your mind and say, someday this will be a thing, and tell people like, yeah, I want to start a business. Here's kind of the idea, but I still need to figure some stuff out. Like, I was like, you just have to make a decision. You either have to go for it and do it. And that doesn't necessarily mean for everyone you have to like leave your job, cold turkey and do this full time, but you need to either take actionable steps towards it, or you need to stop thinking about it, because allowing yourself to think about it was allowing me to not have to make a decision, but still feel like I was maybe, pushing towards something in the future. And for me, I'm a competitive person. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to make a decision, I'm probably going to end up doing it. And, obviously with like the other stuff that was happening in my life, like it became apparent that that was a decision that absolutely needed to be made. And ended up being made in like January of 2018. So it was, I think I knew that the decision was going to fall one way versus the other, but I kind of also gave myself the out of, you don't have to do it. Like, it's okay if you don't do it, but you can't keep telling yourself that you might do it, because you just have to make a decision. And I don't know, that for me, I think was really helpful.
I love that. I absolutely love that. For me, it's that point of getting yourself to the point where that domino is starting to fall over and you can't stand it back up again. It's like, well, now we just have to figure it out. So let's just do it and get on Google and just do our job here. Yep. This has been so wonderful. I'm so thrilled to have gotten to catch up with you, by the way, and just learn about everything that you've been up to, because I've been following it and it's just awesome to hear the whole story. But also it's so valuable to hear other people who are in the position that you're in, who are willing to candidly talk about the things that they had difficulty with. Because as you mentioned, when people put on that glossy exterior about how things look and how things appear to be going, it makes it feel like, well, if I'm running into roadblocks, clearly I'm not cut out for this, because everyone else is finding this to be so easy and friction-free, and here I am having such a difficult time. So when we can have these open and candid conversations about, nope, I fell on my face like 10 times, and I just got back up 11 times, and that's why I'm still going. It's just really helpful for people to understand that it doesn't mean that you're bad at it and that you're not cut out for it. It just means like, whatever, you fell on your face today, get back up. It's not a big deal. So I just appreciate you being on. This is so wonderful. And I am just excited for you and everything that's happening with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's like hilarious to me truly to be on a podcast called Women Inspired, because like you are a woman who has inspired me for so long that like I don't know, like I feel like I should have just been interviewing you the whole time, and maybe that would have been better. But
well, Mutual Admiration Society. So this is awesome.
You having me. This was awesome, April. Thank you so much.
Isn't she awesome? And isn't that such a breath of fresh air? Someone who is willing to come on an interview like this and be so open and so authentic about the experience that they've had, both, the thrilling and amazing things like being free from the anxiety that she was feeling as a result of her previous job, but then also the unexpected and downsides, like feeling like an imposter when you're starting a company and have nothing tangible to show for it because you're in the very early stages and you're struggling through figuring out how to actually make the product or service that you want to put out into the world, how to actually make it happen. I mean, man, those things can make it really difficult to continue to move forward. And I just love that Rachel came on this show and was willing to be super open and honest about her experience and the fact that she experienced all that and is still going. So Rachel, if you're listening, congratulations. We are all cheering for you. And I'm ordering your books to send to my friend who just recently got pregnant. So I'm super pumped. All right, I want to hit two things before I close out today. Number one, Identity shifts. We talked about this a bit, and a while back I did an episode purely on this concept of identity. So if you go back, let me peek. I believe it was episode 118. If you go to aprilseifert.com and search for identity, you will bring up that episode. I talk all about the importance of our own self-identity and how that impacts our behavior, the goals that we set, how hard we'll persist at them, and ultimately how successful we will be. So identity is a big stinking deal. And because it's a big stinking deal, when our identity shifts or when something happens that we aren't acclimated to, so hey, new parents, how you doing? I'm talking about you. Hey, people who recently changed careers and are doing something different, I'm talking about you. What's up, entrepreneurs who are just newly in their business? I'm talking about you. Hello, newly married people. You guys are in this too. And so is everyone else who's experiencing the discomfort that comes with an identity shift, even if it's one that you desperately want. So here's the thing. You could be so excited to marry the person that you are about to marry. You could be so thrilled and so excited to be becoming a parent. Maybe entrepreneurship has been your dream for so long, and you are so grateful that you're in it and that you're doing it. It doesn't mean that that identity shift isn't difficult. And the fact that you're having difficulty with it is not a signal that you're not cut out for it. What it means is we all have a comfort zone. We all have a zone of, think like zone of authenticity. And our identity is one of the things that comprises the barrier that dictates what's inside and what's outside of our comfort zone. Our identity is a huge piece of that. And when something is outside of that, because it's new and you've never been in that situation before, you've never been someone's spouse before. This is different. You've never been someone's parent before. You've never been able to talk about your work without the comfort of a title given to you by someone else, which deems you worthy and valuable as a person. Not really, but that's what we think, right? When something operates outside of that comfort zone, we feel icky. There's not a better word for it. It just feels icky and disjointed. Please do not mistake that discomfort and that ickiness and what can masquerade as feeling like misalignment. Don't mistake that for just, I'm just uncomfortable. I just haven't done this before and I just feel awkward and uncomfortable, like I am my kid walking around in my shoes, like I am impersonating an adult here and this doesn't feel right. That's how it feels for everybody. Everybody going through every single identity shift that's major that they ever go through, everyone feels like this. Do not take it as an indication that you're not cut out for the thing that you're doing. That's not what's happening. It's just your psychology and your mind saying, whoa, dude, you're doing something that is not in alignment with who we think you are. Hold up. Evaluate. And all you need to do is get your mind to understand, nope, thank you, I appreciate it, but sweetheart, we are going in a different direction now. You need to expand to include this new thing inside this new identity. And I promise you, if you do that intentional work and you do that intentional self-talk around creating a new identity that includes that new thing, your mind will catch on. It is powerful. It is not that sophisticated. It will catch on and it'll start working for you. And that new thing, pretty soon, will feel very comfortable. Identity. Had to call that out. Second, I kind of alluded to this. Okay, so when we do something that is new and really scary, it is extremely natural, obviously, to feel psycho uncomfortable and not good, right? Super uncomfortable. That discomfort can cause us to look for reasons to quit. Subconsciously, automatically, we start looking for an out because we don't like feeling like that. No one does. We're looking for a reason to quit. And if this is a goal that you desperately want to achieve, if this is something that you desperately want to keep doing, do not confuse some of that dissonance feeling, because that's what it is. It's cognitive dissonance. You believe you are one thing, that your identity is one thing, and here you're doing something that's not in alignment with that. It just feels yucky. Don't take that as a reason to quit. It might feel like it's logical. This is my logical, point-attable reason why I no longer have to keep going and why I can go back to my comfort zone. If you truly want to grow and you truly want to go after that goal, stay out there and stay uncomfortable. It's going to be okay. I promise you. The longer you're out there, the less uncomfortable it will be. And I'm going to go back to peak mind again. And I keep talking about this because I'm so passionate about it. And I'm so stinking excited that it's out in the world. You want to talk about figuring out some technology things? Oh my gosh. It has been crazy. But peak mind, this notion around identity and around your comfort zone and around how you don't feel good and the cognitive dissonance that comes with operating outside of those things, this is something we work on. It's a beautiful example. It is a beautiful example of something that we work on around identifying what those barriers are and what they might mean for you. If you want a taste of that, I had mentioned the episode that I did purely on identity. So again, this is episode 118 of the podcast, was focused purely on this concept of identity and how it shapes our behavior. There is a free download available for that episode to give you a taste of the type of stuff that we do within the Peak Mind Center. I want this information out in the world because it will change people's lives. I know it will, when it causes you to intentionally understand some of the factors that are holding you back that do not need to hold you back anymore. So, free download to help you figure out what those aspects of your self-identity are that might be holding you back and how they are likely influencing your behavior and what you might be able to do to change it. So, go grab that free download, episode 118. It's awesome. And if you want to go even further than that, join us in the Peak Mind Center. We're having a ton of fun over there. Growing membership. It is a stinking blast. So head over to www.peakmindpsychology.com. I'll put the link in this episode description below so you can just click right over in your mobile device. We would love to have you. And if you have questions, shoot me an email. We'd love to hear from you. All right, friends, I've been chit-chatting for a long time. You have things to get to, lives to get to, all of that. So I will close out by saying thank you. Thank you so much for following me. Thank you so much for your shares, for your comments, for your social media DMs, for the messages I get through my website. I can't tell you what this community means to me and how grateful I am for each and every one of you who show up every single week. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill, and to my incredible sponsor, Modern Well. If you want to learn more about how you can reach your goals in a one-of-a-kind work-life community, visit www.modernwell.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this inspiring message. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, I want to remind you that it is absolutely possible to live a happy, fulfilling life, even in spite of all of the chaos and demands we all experience. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to gain access to tools that will help you do just that. I have carefully created and curated a set of tools that combine the powerful fields of psychology and design thinking to help you intentionally create a fulfilling, happy life you love. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and until next week, stay inspired.